So I've officially played over 15,000 days in a solo survival world, and I've been able to do so much in that time. From building entire towns, to decorating massive farms, exploring all there is to explore for, and so much more. In this video I'll show you everything we've done in these last 15,000 days. We've started out the world right by these 5 torches, and over time we created a mountain ridge connecting the 2 sides of the valley together and built a castle against it. And where there was once just 5 torches, now it's a nice little balcony. Even after all the building we've done, this castle now stands as a central spot in this world, with a map room, different sets of armor, the raiders hall, and for now several undecorated farms. The map room has several smaller maps of outlying areas, but the main focus is on the floor maps, where you can see the entire area surrounding spawn. And to give a little bit of an idea of scale, the current castle we're in? Yeah, that is that tiny spick in the middle. Just below the map room we have the main armor room, in which we have a full netherite set with turtle helmet for every single armor trim in the game. And of course the armor set that we've had since before armor trims right above the door. Every single one of these armor sets is fully enchanted as well, obviously. And every day at the start of the stream we pick a randomized one and just wear that for the day. And when we walk out of the armor room we get a full view from the courtyard of the entire castle. The inspiration for this castle was a bit of a mixture between a Saracen-style fortress and a Byzantine palace, but of course a little bit less ruined. In the far corner of the build we have a small area for some indoor farms. It's one of the few areas in the entire world that are not decorated, but it's for the simple reason it has kept changing quite often how I want to do the layout, and I'm just not sure on what farms I want in there yet. So we've kind of kept off that for now. But in here we got, I guess a Shulker monster. But a nice old cactus farm, a 150 furnace super smelter, and right in the corner over there, way above the ground, we got a rooted dirt farm. The smelter and the rooted dirt farm mostly, since they are in spawn chunks, but they'll just keep working as long as we're in the overworld, even when we're not around spawn. And as for the cactus farm, well, we didn't really have a use for that enormous tower down the middle. So I figured we might as well put one in near the smelter. Right next door to it is the Raiders Hall, a room where everyone who ever raided into this world while we were live on Twitch gets an item of their choice on the wall, and every time they raid in again afterwards, we upgrade that item into a higher tier. And as you can see, there's a fair few people with iron, copper, gold, and there's even a few people all the way up to netherite. I don't know why I let chat talk me into this. I don't know. And for the few who've raided in after maximizing that out, we've got armor stands that get upgraded bit by bit as well. And as for the last side of the castle, we've got a bit of a museum for all the achievements we've gotten throughout this entire world, such as special amounts of blocks mined and books of people that were at certain moments during streams. When we ride out of spawn, we can slowly see the idea I've had since I started this world, to create a massive world filled with builds that are connected to each other. And everywhere you look, there's just another amazing view. As we ride into this nice little custom forest, we also get to the next big build in the world. Let me quickly explain. For a fair few of the builds I have, there's been a viewer on Twitch that has redeemed a channel point redemption to have me build an entire area, but with their general idea and lore. And this build in specific was for the goat people. Right below this forest, we have a massive cave that we completely blew out by using TNT. Sometimes fairly safe. And other times a little less. Oh! No, not that way! Fuck! But in this hole, we built an ancient city that used to belong to the masters of pottery and terracotta. A Roman settlement out of packed mud, terracotta and brick, all in a Victorian style, focused around creating an atmosphere purely by using daylight as a main light source. This does mean that walking through it isn't all that safe though. But as this is the city of pottery and terracotta, we did have to give it some function as well. So inside one of the big temples we have a combined mud and clay farm. We simply place dirt, the farm turns it into mud, and depending on what way the lever is flicked, we either send it straight to a blast chamber, or we send it to a holding area where it slowly turns to clay for us to mine later on. And behind the other temple, you might ask? Well, we just don't really talk about it for now. We never got to work, and I really have refused to do anything about it for the last 4 years now. Moving on. The next build can already be seen from down here. Ancient Nordic barrier mountain, based off of Bleak Falls Barrows from Skyrim. We have gotten lucky with the world seed though, since even for this build I didn't really have to terraform too much. Just a few small changes to allow for a smooth walkway. The exterior of this build is only a small part of the entire thing though. The real deal is when you go inside. The interior was meant to be a lot along the lines of Bleak Falls Barrow as well. A ruined structure, completely abandoned, lots of rubble just everywhere, paths splitting off into a maze, and the deeper down you go, the more magical it all becomes. Several live skeletons to mimic the dead coming back to life, and multiple halls with ancient scripts and blue fire. When we finally get deep down enough into the maze, all paths lead back together to a single hallway. Get further down into more natural caves, where inside of Skyrim you would get to the room where you would get your first shout. Since I do like to give function to my builds to create a reason to get back to the builds we created before, I did add another part to this as well. A side passage from the last room that leads into a massive hall that now functions as my main storage room in this world. Rows upon rows of multi-item storage for nearly every single item in the game, along with an overflow for all the items I just know we are going to get a lot of, to be loaded for my storage later. But of course I'm not going to go down the maze every single time I need an item. So for myself I built a secret way in and out of this place. A small button hidden on the throne to open up a hole in the ceiling so we can easily fly in and out. And then we end up right back here again. For the next build we have to go a little bit back down the mountain again. But instead of going right back into the custom forest, we head left into a custom Birch Valley. Just like both the ancient city and Bleak Falls Barrow, this is yet another redemption build for a viewer. This time a castland town based around hammers, along the line of blacksmiths, as well as along the lines of getting hammered. Which basically makes this a build of smiths who just love meat a bit too much, I guess. Don't ask me why, please. For this build, I've taken inspiration from Beatup's his Hermitcraft Season 9 starter build, as well as Whip's custom birch forest in his hardcore world. Combining the two together to create an almost Austrian vibe village, but with bright cyan and white houses. That along with a ton of small details and lush greenery to make for a nice area for bees as well. And those bees obviously for all the meat. As you may have guessed at this point, the function of this build is to have all the bee farms in my world. A small bee aviary of sorts as a breeder, behind a small castle courtyard with a massive magenta flower, a staircase down into the honey and honeycomb farm, with in total almost 100 beehives, chocolading all the drops to give more materials than I could ever want for. On the other side of the castle, there's also a small blacksmith area. A couple of houses with a stream in between to smelt all the ores into ingots and then turn all the ingots into weapons, tools and armor. In the back of the smithy we have a small super smelter as well, just in case we ever need something. Inside of the town I really tried to go for a lot of detail, to get all the small little decorations in to really bring some extra life to the entire area. On the far end of the valley I built a big dam-like wall, although I guess there isn't all that much water to hold back. But it leads into a river that flows into a lake with two big floating islands above it. The islands used to be in the lake itself, but they have been dug out, creating the exact shape in the water down below, leaving an archipelago of islands where the land was stored. On top of these islands I created a castle, based off the Netflix series Castlevania. Just not as dark, where inside I have 4 separate creeper farms, each hidden away in one of the towers of the castle. Since the islands are way up in the sky and I made sure that they are completely spawn-proof, these creeper farms are more than plenty, even though the farms themselves wouldn't normally be all that great. But this, along with a decent enough sugarcane farm to also supply for the paper, makes this build into my main source for rockets. In the throne room, we created several big pillars along with a big chandelier to really get some importance into this build. And in the middle a small pond for some axolotls, and for some reason a skeleton horse. This guy's been here for well over 5,000 days now, and I still have no clue how he got there. Just outside the central room, we have 2 more layers of decoration. A small inner circle with a small well and some custom trees, and a passageway into one more area for some living quarters of the servants. An alley-like street filled with extra small houses to get some extra life in here. Back at the horse, we have to backtrack the path a little bit towards the campsite, behind which we have some farm fields and a tiny farming village. The main reason we built this area was to fill the empty space between the greenhouse and the big builds just behind us right now. But it's also easy to imagine that this place is just to feed all the inhabitants of this world. I promise I don't just imagine those. Right? Yeah, surely. But as we pass the main farmhouse and go right up this little hill, we get to my greenhouse institute, the place that used to hold all of my early game greenhouse farms, but we don't really use it anymore. But even though function has gone away from this place, it doesn't take away from the amazing view we get from the balcony over here. The place where I built the first house in the world, and which over time we transformed from empty hill into a massive city along with castle and several surrounding structures. Riding down the path from the greenhouse again, we can get a small glimpse of a forester's hut through the trees. But instead of going that way, we're going to follow the main road leading into the city. Inside of the city, we truly went all out. Everywhere you look, there's just more and more details. And every single house with a full interior. And everywhere you go, different sections of the city dedicated with different markets, shops, and craftspeople. Throughout the city, I have a ton of small farms as well. Basically how you could look at it is that this town is a mini version of my entire world. A lot of farms spread out, each with their own decoration. In the case of the city, several miniature farms decorated by houses, where now in the entire world we have entire areas to decorate one big version of each farm. From a miniature super smelter, to a sugarcane farm, an auto brewer behind the bar, to a starter storage. But the single best farm I got throughout this entire starter area has got to be my starter creeper farm. Or rather, my creeper lava lamp. This creeper farm is right here in the main castle. Where in the throne room we have a small window through which you can see several creepers fall down. But the beauty of it is, after a small moment, you can also see them floating back up again. This mesmerizing concept was an original idea from Dave Guy, with some help from Fairly Hard to get it working. It all starts with a basic creeper farm. We get them into a bubble elevator to go all the way up to the top of the castle. Here we drop them down, but instead of letting them keel over due to fall damage, we leave them with about 2 hearts of health. Just behind the skill chamber, we have 20 shulkers hidden inside the lava flow. One shulker right beside it that gets mad at a snow golem, and because of this all 20 shulker inside the lava will try to shoot at the snow golem. But since their bullets can't reach, they will turn around, creating a shulker bullet cannon. This cannon in turn is aimed directly at the kill chamber, hitting the creepers that have just fallen down, making them fly all the way back up, and creating this beautifully mesmerizing creeper lava lamp. But above ground isn't the only bit of building we've done inside the city area. If we head towards the town hall, and down into the cellar, and we quickly just pop down here, we can reach a big tunnel system that holds my Hall of Fame in the world. A concept inspired by Link Z, where viewers of my stream can apply for a plot and use channel points to decorate their plot with armor, weapons, items, mobs, pets, and much, much more. These hallways have a massive variety of themes to make sure that there's always a theme for everybody. And I gotta say, it's quite fun to keep figuring out new themes to decorate in. Although some themes do get a little sus. Down in the Hall of Fame I also have a small area where we have all of the more special passive mobs. Camels, goats, creaming goats, both pandas and brown pandas. And since recently, we also have blue axolotls after a lucky 1800 times breeding. Worth it though. This room could go with a bit more decorating though. One day. Back up we go. This city has 2 more gates leading out of it. One way towards another piece of farmlands just across the river to decorate an early game wool farm and pumpkin farm. With some of the first tries to get certain decorating tricks down, this was for sure one of the earliest areas in this world. Such as trees and their surroundings, crop fields, chicken coop with egg farm underneath, and a rabbit hole under another tree. The other gate leads to some more builds though. Another bridge, with a path leading up a steep hill, where we have an old abbey that I themed around the Order of Cistercians. Or in other words, a beer brewing abbey. When going through the gate, we can already see a courtyard with a main structure, a chapel, some stables, and a small herb garden. And I tried to add in as many small details in here as I could, just to bring some more life to it all. On the inside of the main structure is where we have the actual brewery though. 2 big brewing tanks with pipes in between, 2 fermentation tanks more towards the back. These tanks and pipes aren't just for show though. We built this entire area up in such a way that this is an actual functioning auto brewer. We simply select the ingredients that we want in the order that we want them. The ingredients will go through the pipes and into the tanks. And when we got everything, we just hit start brewing button. The auto brewer will do its work. And we get a full soak of potions returned to us. But since we are to be brewing here, the areas surrounding the build have been decorated with a small bee area to collect some honey for meat, and on the other side some fields with hops and wheat. Down below these fields the path continues a bit further out, where along the river, through some fields, we slowly get some custom spruce trees in view, which are part of yet another channel build redemption. A town on the lake's edge, completely encased in the skeleton of a once mighty dragon. Tons of houses, all fully decorated and filled with armored sense and detail. And with all these structures being made out of brown and warmer tones, this build gives a bit of a barbaric vibe, making this a town for mercenaries and wandering warriors who get to match up against each other. The function of this build is of course set in theme as well, where this main hall as a center point for a pillager tinder machine. The original idea and design for this is from Dave Guy, but I've redone it a little bit to decorate it to my wishes. And how it works is as follows. Where we have this massive lake now, there used to be a spruce forest with a pillager outpost. The lake makes sure all pillager spawns go in a box below the lake to turn this entire town into a bad omen farm. From the box below the lake, we transport the pillagers in minecarts to a pillager storage. Up in the main hall, we decide for each pillager whether we like them or not. If we don't want them, we simply swipe left, and the pillager will go into one of 5 random unenlivened boxes. If you do want to keep them, however, we simply swipe right. The pillager will go down, it will get poisoned, and it will go into a secondary pillager storage with every pillager on low health. And whenever we want to get a level of bad omen, we simply punch the pillager that's sticking its head out. We wait a second, and we get a new one delivered to us. Easy as that. With the last 2 builds in the spawn area, we have to cycle back a little bit towards the brewing abbey. Right past the bee area, and just past the traveling cart. The ledge to walk over gives an amazing view of the main city, but it is only a small path that leads towards a small mountain lake, where way at the bottom of it, there is a small opening into a cave system that just seems to be going on endlessly. With small decorated rooms, hidden doorways, bridges leading over ravines, all to lead a path underneath the entire mountain area and into a massive hidden valley, filled with heaps of custom botanical life, trees out of terracotta, honey, basalt and deep slate, some of crying obsidian, glass and sandstone, plenty of massive mushrooms, and 2 enormous magical oaks that are slowly getting corrupted from their roots, all surrounding a ruined village that has been abandoned because of the corruption that has come. The source of this corruption comes from the source of all life in this valley, the water. And if we follow the stream up into the mountain, we slowly get towards an open cave, filled with an open lake. Within the center an almost golem-like scene, where we captured the warden right after the time Minecraft 1.19 launched. And now he has turned this lake into a fully automated tropical fish farm with terrible rates. Only that fish and without any storage. Oh well. But this valley wasn't always like this. And I don't just mean the trees and mushrooms, of course. A good portion of the mountain ranges are also built up. The shorter side near the entrance is the same range as for the spawn castle, and the entire big mountain range towards the back. Although this is in proper green style and doesn't have a back yet. Now that may sound like I'm coping, but the thought behind is that I want to build more on the other side. Even though I don't know what I want to build yet. And to build it up only to change it all again later, it doesn't really make sense. But besides it being a beautiful mob farm, it also leads us to the last build in the spawn area. A Sangri Lathian Valley to celebrate reaching Twitch partnership. Several quartz structures with a main temple-like building holding the Twitch checkmark at the top, surrounded by multiple waterfalls going down, some samurai and some wine pourer statues, accompanied by in total 69 custom trees. This entire valley was built up in a total of 4 days, but it definitely has some amazing views hidden inside of it. Besides the spawn region, there are a fair few other builds in this world, but most are spread around since they need certain biomes, areas or dimensions. All of these are connected through the Nether hub though. The Nether hub is fairly humble in looks, and has yet another shulker monster, but it stretches well over 1,000 blocks and allows for multiple ways of transportation. Flying through is fairly easy, boating through on the ice roads for the longer distances, and a minecart if you really want to, but those are mostly to transport mobs around, for instance to get into the Hall of Fame. As long as it rides towards the main portal, it will drop down to another portal down below, that connects up to the Hall of Fame. The first build we have in the Nether is a little bit towards the north. A Tartaros-like build where I tried to build with just grey tones on the exterior. Mixing that with the Greek architecture led to an amazing underground feel, although some work still needs to be done on the surrounding biome. The inside has just a tiny bit more color, with the roofs out of oxidized copper and a couple of lanterns. One of the wings has a small bartering setup where I tried to hide away most of the redstone, but the main function is a Witherskeletonfarm inside of the middle portion of the build, designed by TetraDB this time, where like most Witherskeletonfarms, we lure them in by putting a piglin in the middle and a drop chute to fall down. But here is where it becomes a bit more interesting. At the bottom of the drop chute, we have a mob conveyor to push the mobs towards the center, while simultaneously dispensing carved pumpkins on any skeletons that can wear one. The pumpkins are to take the skeletons out of the mob cap, so more new ones can already spawn in while they are being moved about. The conveyor makes the traveling of the mobs a ton quicker, but some extra help from the pumpkins never hurts. In the middle, we have a second drop chute where the skeletons fall in a 1x1 hole for us to easily whack them down and get all the drops. The output of this does get kinda nuts for a one-dimension farm already, and because of that, I felt like using the coal for a super smelter in the same area could be an amazing idea. The last function to this build is mostly in the overworld, but it has its storage here in the Nether. In the overworld, we have an ancient Greek-themed quarry, a few houses for the miners, a couple kilns and furnaces to smelt all the ores, and a palisade wall and watchtowers to protect it. In the middle, a large hole where all the stone has been dug out, but you could probably have noticed that there is no diorite. This is because this is the only area in my world where I use a resource pack. The only thing this resource pack does is switch out diorite versions for limestone versions. And the simple reason is that there's just not that many blocks that are suited for a Greek-themed ancient quarry. Below this build is my main mining area though. Whenever I'm in need for more minables, I simply drop down here. I simply dig out a chunk of whatever I need. We chuck it all into a shulker box. The shulker goes into the dropper, and it gets shot up to the surface. Here the shulker gets unloaded. All the items are shot into the Nether, where they are transported and shot over a big sorting array. Everything gets sorted and shulker loaded and put into storage. This makes it so that whenever I need any stone block type, I can quickly jump into the Nether, grab what I need here, and get back to building. The next area is just a rocket away from the Witherskeletonfarm. Yet another very early game build is my villager trading hall. Inspired by Flip's Hardcore Season 1 trading hall, it has 4 different sections leading from the center. Each hallway with its own category of villagers, one for weapons and gear, one for masons for all the building blocks, one for farmers, clerics and fishermen for food, redstone and campfires, and one for librarians for all different books and glass, and for cartographers to trade glass panes for emeralds. But the most annoying thing about villagers, besides them being villagers of course, is moving villagers about. And with nearly 200 villagers in here already, and a few more to come, I didn't want to manually move them all about. So to help that, I set up an entire bowl of spaghetti redstone lines to make this work. Starting from a basic villager breeder, giving them a profession, and sending them on their way to a holding area. Here we can easily zombify up to 7 villagers at once, and easily cure them again. And we repeat that process until all trades are down to 1 emerald. Once the villagers are cured, we can go back up to the hallways. Each of these hallways has a button in it, which requests the first villager in the holding cell towards the specific hallway. For the rest, all we have to do is make the rails hanging from the ceiling split off in the right spot. We request the villager, We eject the villager into his new forever home, and we can trade to our heart's desire. There are two reasons this trading hall is a bit further out from spawn though. The obvious reason is that I think we have plenty of mobs around spawn even without all these guys. But the second reason is the location we have it in. This trading hall is in the middle of an absolutely massive mushroom island. And slowly but steadily, we've started to transform this entire island into a lush green area, for which I want to build up a bit of a steampunk farmlands. It is definitely a work in progress though. Yes, it definitely is. But in here, we already have a few small wheat farms to keep the villager theme alive. Along with a couple temporary farms that we still need to decorate, like a non-duping TNT farm, as well as just next to our main mushroom island, another mushroom island, which has my iron farm. A bit of an area not so much on the pretty builds, but we use the materials from them quite a lot. A small trip through the Nether again, and we get to the next few redemption builds. This time a cartoony style area where I tried to make all terrain look like it came out of an old cartoon. Terracotta, wool, concrete to make for all the terrain, with bright cotton candy trees, presents scattered all the way around, a big chocolate river coming out of the mountain and flowing through the valley. And at the center of it all, a massive floating birthday cake being held up by balloons. On top of the birthday cake, there's a birthday party going on as well, with drinks and jelly galore. And that's also the link towards the use of this build in my world. Since inside of this cake, I have hidden away a Slimefarm. The entire area we have built on used to be a swamp, which we fully drained out and dug about 20 layers deep. The front side of the swamp we hid away with a custom mountain. And as per tradition, no backside. That all to make use of as many spawnable platforms as possible to make this cake as efficient for slime as we could. All in all, not too shabby. On the north side of spawn, there's one more nether portal that's connected to the nether hub. And this one connects to our main end strongholds. But even though the stronghold itself is not all that decorated yet, we have been fairly busy on the end side of things. The spawn platform is on the middle of a gigantic bridge that on one side has a small floating island with a tower, and on the other side it connects up to 3 more islands, each one bigger than the last, with on the biggest of the 3 a massive castle for the Queen of the Ends. The first 2 islands describe a good bit of lore as well, where we can see the inhabitants of the Nether have tried to invade the End and slowly scorching away the trees, with the Endermen holding them at bay to keep the castle safe, even capturing some of the piglin. Inside of the castle, we have a lush courtyard with several paths leading out of it. One into a big throne room with a massive chandelier, several unique towers, each with their own little gimmick, an underground chorus farm to generate purple, for which we simply grab some snowballs, we shoot the chorus flowers, and we wash everything away. The chorus fruit goes right into a super smelter, and we automatically get the popped chorus fruits and chests. Towards the back of the castle, there's a bright cherry forest, with vines out of end rods, a nice little lake, and a solitary tower to function as a resting place for our dragon egg. Admit it, a fair hassle to completely get rid of obsidian pillars and all the endstone, and then build it all again myself. But I have to say, it definitely looks a lot better. The purple farm isn't the only function in the end though. The small separate island has its own function as an enderman farm, where we can simply whack away at them for some easier experience. But besides the sorts of experience, it is also my wither rose farm. With the wither skeleton skulls we get from the nether, we can spawn in the wither, and every time we do so, we get just over a stack of wither roses. For a nice supply of black dye. Ah, here's where I slept. Actually kinda perfect, since I forgot a super smelter in the city when we were here earlier. Totally not scripted. Yup, and back to the nether we go. With the north of the spawn all done, and the east of the west not really having any builds besides the builds around spawn, it is time to head on south, where the first stop is output for our shulker farm. Not much really, but I figured it's worth mentioning with the crazy amount of shulkers that we have in the world. But going south even more, about 600 blocks later, we get to my first fully completed build in the world, which is my guardian farm. A drained circle all the way around what once was an ocean monument, Themed after the Disney movie Atlantis, where they have the crystals to power all the machines, here we put those crystals to use for keeping the ocean out of this area, making the crystals both the central point for the lore, as well as making them the spawn spots for the Guardians. The main difference with the movie is that we made the structures a bit more Mount Olympus-like, at least compared to the broken down builds in the movie, creating shrines to all the different gods and heroes of ancient Greece, each themed with their own armor stand scene and items. The central part of this area is both the kill chamber for the Guardians in the quartz cube, as well as a pond for several axolotls, among which the first blue axolotl we got in this world, which feels like the only right place to put this little guy, since just outside of these walls is where we got all the tropical fish for breeding them. Which is also the reason we built this Guardian farm here. Fully inside of a lukewarm ocean, it was the perfect spot to create an area where at least somewhat green grass was possible. A little further back down the south Nether tunnel, we reach the end of the Nether hub. It ends out in a massive open area in the middle of a post-apocalyptic futuristic build. The entire circular city ruined and broken down, with just the central tower and 4 of the smaller towers on the sides repaired and connected by some bridges. The surrounding area is fully mined out, getting us well over 2 million netherrack mined in this world, and whatever bits were left on the lava level, reworked into small blackstone islands with magma and lava to make them spawn-proof. All this mining and spawn-proofing was for a good reason though, since this entire area here functions as my gold farm, where unlike most gold farms where you have zombie piglings falling down or going through a portal, here we pick up the piglins from spawn platforms at bedrock levels at the bottom of the nether with minecarts, for which the roof and bedrock above the platforms has been removed as well to improve rates. These minecarts travel up the repaired smaller towers in the city, and across some bridges they all come together inside of the main tower, where in the main area, a kill chamber in which all 8 rail lines drop the zombies off, the minecarts go back into item form, only to repeat the cycle over and over. In the kill chamber, we can just swipe our sword at an armor stand and get all the gold we could ever wish for. I might need a better way to get rid of experience though. And the gold we get, we can take upstairs in the main tower and trade it with some piglins for all the barter goods as well. Next to these piglins, we have a small laboratory as well with some villagers, working away with some parts to see if any more gold can be had from these zombified creatures. The origins of these villagers is of course the Overworld, where they once found a zombie piglin roaming in the woods, they followed it, found a source for gold, and obviously set up shop right here in the Nether. And if we quickly go to the Overworld, we get to a nice little village, where instead of the futuristic style, we went a bit more towards the Tuscany feel around the 17th century. A heavily detailed Italian coastal town, with some fishermen, small wheat fields on the side, as well as a vineyard with incredibly hard workers and an olive orchard. Inside the town itself, a couple of small shops and little work areas as well. And in the manor right next to the lighthouse, a little feasting hall for all the villagers to come together. And down in the cellar, a small scoot farm for turtle helmets and brewing potions. Initially, the plan was to have the village along with the gold farm as a single build redeem for one of the viewers of the stream. But we may have gone a little bit overboard during a subathon, and I kind of forgot how long I was working on this. But not too bad for working on a village for a few days straight. If we head away from the village, and just a few rockets further into the jungle, we get to the 20th and latest build in this world. In fact, I think we completed this just mere days before reaching the 15,000 days. Themed completely different from anything else in the world, we created an Aztec/Mayan civilization in the middle of the jungle. I still can't fully figure out which one of the two it is, so if anyone knows, please let me know. The terrain has been reshaped a little bit to allow for the river to flow a bit more freely, to have several waterfalls, and to have the terrain a bit more suitable for buildings. But with several temples, a dozen or so houses, a fair few craftsman areas for crafting bamboo and pottery, some fishing canoes in the river for some food, and 2 hanging rope bridges, this valley really comes to life. And with the near chaos of all the different vegetation and custom trees, it still lets it keep the jungle feel. The temples I have built up in a bit of an interesting way, trying something new with them. Adding a structure out of stone, brick, cobblestone and their mossy variants, with the back wall consisting out of dead coral blocks. This to add a tiny color difference in grey tones, in addition to the slight depth variation, to make the two stand out from each other a bit more, while at the same time blending in perfectly, if that makes any sense whatsoever. To add to the theme a bit more, I've also added several farms to the different temples. In a separate one across the river, a small sniffer farm is hidden away. These ancient creatures with their cyan, red and yellow colors obviously fit perfectly with the theme. So inside of this farm, they're just getting me some extra flowers to decorate with later. The furthest temple up the river is the one dedicated to sacrifices made to Quetzalcoatl. That guy. On the interior, a bit of a sinister look, but we also have a creeper farm in here. The creepers come out of the temple through the mouth of the jaguar statue, jumping down in the sacrificial pit where they slowly disappear into the whirlpool. It's not really a good source for gunpowder, but it is a great bit of movement and a fun view to look at, seeing some creepers fall down whenever you're walking around the area. The biggest of the temples is home to several farms. A tiny wool farm, just to produce the light grey tones that we have in the top of the temple walls. A tweaked version of the Chromoss bone meal farm that produces moss and moss variants, turning any overflow of them into bone meal. This to mimic the dark earth of the Amazon jungle. The man-made earth filled with minerals to grow crops even in the poor soil of a jungle. But in this case, more of a source for being able to get all the mossy blocks to build with. And as a third function to this temple... yeah, yet another super smelter. But in my defense, the closest one to here is 8,000 blocks away. I mean, we just had to, right? Right? With that, we have seen all of the 20 big build areas we have constructed over the last 15,000 days. Please let me know what your favorite one was down in the comments. I'm very curious to see what you guys think. And if you enjoyed watching, please leave a like, and if you want to see even more, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see how we built all of this up, stop by the live streams over on Twitch. And for a little bit more, I hope you will enjoy a few more scenic overviews of some of the builds. Until the next one, bye.